Hey y'all, it is November 30th, and once again, this is the monthly video recap for Allodium. In the last month, it's basically just been a transition here from the build season to the kind of the winter hibernation season. Just in the last day or two, we got a bunch of snow, or wet snow, and feels like winter already. So the main projects in the last month have just been basically winterizing and sealing up the entry hall and also the gate tower. Neither of them are, well, more so the kitchen really, but really none of those three are going to be fully heated through the winter. The kitchen is kind of a buffer zone to the current space. The entry hall in a way sort of is. But all of them don't really work together fully until someone is actually living in the gate tower through the winter, because that has its own fireplace, and then the entry hall can basically take some of the exhaust heat from this living space, as well as from the gate tower, and then it will really be a good buffer zone for both. So other than just sealing those up, then the only other thing really in the last month, and that was just in the last week, I got Allodium active on Hive and Odysee, which is the LBRY blockchain. So Hive is a fork of Steemit, so all of the weekly reports have been published on Steemit since somewhere around block 20, 30, somewhere in there. So for over 3 years now, there's an unbroken chain on Steemit of every weekly block. And I think that, and today's Tuesday, so I'm doing a report after this. So I'm thinking that I'm going to be publishing the report on Hive today. It's pretty much the same format as Steemit, or it's very similar because it's a fork, and then I'll just make a post on Steemit that says that it's moved to Hive, unless there's some issue getting the PC on Hive. But that's what I'm thinking as of now. So being on Hive and Odysee, there's a potential of reaching a more resonant community. And people who are like freedom oriented and who have already bypassed all the censors. It's a very kind of selected group of people who are on those platforms, and then there's also the potential to generate a bit of revenue from the content, because that's what both of those platforms do. They both reward the content creators with revenue as well as not censoring. So that's really ideal for Allodium. And so there, I have been making all sorts of videos on the OG Foundation YouTube channel, but it's most likely that that's gonna really slow down to a trickle at some point going forward into the winter. But we'll see, because I can't predict if I'm going to be inspired to share ideas or whatnot. But it's uncertain how I'm going to maintain that. But all this stuff in relation to Allodium, basically just gotta upgrade by moving over to these two new platforms. Obviously, the season in and of itself at this OG Foundation, Off-Grid Foundation, was a big upgrade of the facade, which is like the curb appeal, at least just on the north side. On the west side, I'm going to post a picture in the report that I'll link this in. There's it still is like camouflage ninja on the west side. North side is like samurai, west side is ninja, or north side is really castle, west side is camouflage. Why I have the big Japanese influence, I haven't fully understood, but I appreciate it. It's a great culture, and they have a lot of honor and respect and direct action, direct language. It's a great language as well. And then I don't know, but what else? I think that's pretty much it for Allodium for And then for everything going on locally here, in the wider sense of everything going on, there's also kind of like it's like a transitionary uncertainty stage where it's hard to see it blowing up into the balloon going further. It seems a lot more likely that out of this transition we're going into a crash. But I've expected that before, and it hasn't happened. And the government can just do all this Keynesian monetary policy and just make new money and keep the fantasy going. But it's just like 2008-9. Basically, the whole bond market the whole stock market was at risk of collapsing, which I'm not sure if that would also lead to the whole bond market collapsing. But basically this time it's like they saved that by way of printing and by way of the dollar being the reserve currency, so they leveraged it up to the next level. And the next time that it's going to fail, it'll be the dollar itself hyperinflating away and failing. And that's what we're seeing right now. Not quite hyperinflation yet, but it's very high inflation, And I think they say hyper is 50% in a month, maybe, is what it is. I'm not exactly sure. But there's not really any there's no change of course happening. Like, these things change course because of war. And so we saw like the 2001 war agenda cycle was a way to utilize the assets to leverage up to another financial cycle, which lasted as long as that power system was in place. And then when they got replaced politically with a different power system, which wasn't the same neocon nation rebuilding kind of idea, what's the point, right? I'm lost right here. It's quite a tangent. What's the point? The point is that they're not going to start a war. They don't have a means to start a war. They don't have anyone they can actually fight and win. Like, they couldn't actually beat Iran. They couldn't beat Russia. They can't beat China without just nuking the shit out of the countries. And, like, how realistic is that, to be the political party that just, like, nukes the world? And, like, we have seen in the past of basically most of the wars that the U.S. has gotten into, they start on false flags. So you could see a scenario where they instigate a false flag, and then it creates the justification to use their weapons. But it's really hard to imagine, because it would have to be not something I want to focus on. But I don't think that's in the cards. I think what's in the cards is Biden, the executive is controlled, the Department of Justice is controlled, the legislative is controlled, and the main banks. Jamie Dimon, he cowers before China and their might. So what I expect is within the next within the term of Biden, before the people can elect a new executive and clean out the legislative, I expect the economic takedown to be complete, and for the war to be over without a shot being fired because of the method of attack, essentially. And I think it's basically checkmate at this point. I don't really see any alternatives. It's just it's already at that point, and it's just kind of playing out before us. This kind of perspective that I'm giving is the only potential is to unsettle that. But if it's stable, and it seems stable, it's just communicating a stable reality. Like, this is the reality that is going on, that's unfolding before us, and it's the underlying reasons why we will be seeing the events unfolding into the future, of lots of events that don't seem to logically make sense, just like the whole jab agenda doesn't logically make sense, and the whole racism agenda doesn't really seem to make sense. But you'll see that there's a uniting factor that unites them all, and it's not very complicated. But what it means is that we can depend upon the government to be the enemy of the people. So not even facilitating their own governmental corporate aims to further their own global power, and just use the people as the securities for that, and leverage the assets of those securities in order to further that global domination. But instead, it will be submissive to a foreign power, and then be used in order to liquidate the wealth that is already present here. So that's the why. The why behind the wildfires, behind the rioting, racist looting that doesn't make any sense, and behind the whole the jab agenda, and weather warfare as well. The power center isn't actually China versus. It cut right when I was about to, or right when I was saying that the power centers aren't actually in the U.S. or China. And we'll go a little. We'll fringe another dimension here, where the power centers, which have traditionally been in Switzerland, that has been their natural fortification, and right around there, Liechtenstein, and a number of regions right around there, where the stolen wealth of millennia has been hoarded. The means of connection between the Earth and the Moon is via the poles. That's the means, without using all sorts of propellant. There's electromagnetic connections, which create, for lack of a better term, gateways between the dimensions of different realms, and these exist at the poles, which is why the governments monopolize the poles. And there's different potentials at the North and South Pole, both for their polarities as well as for the nature of one being continental and the other being wholly of water, in the dimension of water. Without getting too sidetracked, because that's exactly what's happening. How did I get sidetracked? Let's just revert there. How did we get sidetracked to dimensions, poles? Oh, skimming a dimension about where these power centers are, right? Because they actually create alternate dimensions with their particle accelerators in order to create localized fields and to be able to look into the future via their technology. So by creating technology that transcends time, and then being able to interact with that technology through relativistic beam forms. Kind of. I don't know, I'm getting confused. Something about the power centers looking into the future in relativistic beam forms, as if this is in relation to that. So, as there's less video available, there becomes a time of uncertainty, as the master at the rudder has been withheld, and people ask, who is John Galt? And society kind of just goes. So, having prepared for such, being the end of the season, entering into hibernation, there's a little more to do now, and there's a little more to share, and there is months of winter ahead until 420 of next year, when we will come out So that's just about, well, we got all of December, January, February, March, and basically 5 months. So we've got a 5-month period where winter is coming. We've got a little foresight in the current weather, and all there is to do is to prepare for that, and we'll see in the next season what is to come. But that will end this this transitionary video into the winter, so that we'll be in full hibernation mode by the next time you see an Allodium video update. And this will also be probably exclusively on Odysee, and I'll just link to it elsewhere. And yeah, I'll just have a fresh start on Odysee with this channel. Well, it goes back to the others, but anyways, that's the end. Take care, everyone.